It's the Tune Under podcast. I'm Jack, and with me today is Mark in Brisbane. How are you, Mark?
I'm good, thank you. Recovered from the weekend.
I was going to say, how did you pull it on Sunday?
I was actually doing okay, surprisingly.
Yeah, we had a fun night. There was people probably saw on Twitter. There was 57% of the Tune Under pod all met up in Brisbane. We had a good night. We were singing Sven Botman songs, which is pretty appropriate. That's what we're going to talk about today. We've also got Keegan in Geelong. How are you doing, Keegan?
Good, thanks, Jack. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to be on with you again. The last time we were on together was, I think, the Liverpool game. We did a review of that game.
Yeah.
So nice to have you back as a permanent signing.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and yeah, good stuff to talk about today, at least. Anyway.
Yeah. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about Sven Botman. So the news broke it was Friday overnight for us in Australia. And I checked I did what I shouldn't have done. I checked Twitter at 3:00 in the morning when I woke up just to go to the toilet. And I checked Twitter, and our friend Fabrizio Romano had tweeted that Sven Botman, it was all agreed. I got a little bit excited. I couldn't go back to sleep very well after that. But when Fabrizio tweets something, it's serious. It's amazing. He's got 9 million followers on Twitter now. I remember when we first started talking about him, he had 6.5 million. So he's gained 2.5 million followers in the space of about 4 or 5 months.
Bonkers.
It's absolutely bonkers, all right. But that was soon picked up by Pete Graves as well of Sky Sports. So when these guys are kind of tweeting something, something's afoot. That you can start taking it seriously. So the current situation is that Botman is having a medical today, Monday apparently, UK time, ahead of completing that move. So he's on his way to Tyneside now, or he's on Tyneside now. I'm sure there'll be videos of him or photos of him somewhere. I'm surprised the plane spotters haven't checked out where he is yet.
They're already on.
They're already on, yeah.
They're already going for it, yeah.
But there's a long-standing interest in Botman from Newcastle, and going back to January when we were very keen. And that's fact because Amanda Staveley came out after the transfer window had shut and said that Botman and Lingard were two players that we wanted and that were really interested in signing for us. And really, really significantly, we've apparently beaten off interest from AC Milan in Botman this time. The fee is reported to be anywhere between 35 and 40 million with the add-ons as well. So this guy, he's a league winner with Lille. He's had 2 seasons at Lille now, and he won the league in his first season. He's played at every age group for the Netherlands, from under 15s all the way through to the under 21s, and he's been in the senior squad a couple of times, but he hasn't played yet. So really, I just want to get your initial reaction on this then. Mark, I'll go with you first. What's your initial reaction to this, what seems to be a marquee signing for Newcastle?
Yeah, so I was clever enough not to check my phone in the middle of the night, so I did actually sleep okay.
Good call.
First thing in the morning, straight onto Twitter. What's new? Who have been linked with? And got the news that it all come through and looked like it was actually finally happening. So yes, naturally we all got a little bit excited. It was probably not the ideal celebratory stuff to have for our meetup. The alcohol was flowing freely. At least I didn't sort of miss my bus stop, unlike some of us.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that little story later. I'll save that one for later.
So no, it's a really I think it's that kind of signing that will hopefully precipitate others. I think having such a long-standing pursuit of any player is obviously going to mean that people get a bit frustrated, and we've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, no, we should pull out of it." And I was always of the mindset, look, we're not going for also around players. We're trying to attract top talent. There's going to be a bit of interest from other top clubs around Europe. So if you want your player badly enough, you stick with it until it's definitely a no. And we've done it. And whatever sort of face saving the Italian press is doing at the moment in terms of it's just money and the player hasn't helped himself and he wanted to go. It's like the player we agreed a fee. you couldn't match it. It's not exactly the first time that's happened in football, and I'm pretty sure, you know, AC Milan's probably outbid some smaller teams as well over the years. So, you know, so swings and roundabouts, what goes around comes around. But the big thing for me is that, you know, the player's not put up any stress. He's not put any fuss. He wanted to clearly come here. He was quite happy to. He's obviously going to have, you know, a foot in both camps. He's not going to sort of burn his bridges when there's a big transfer on the horizon. But yeah, he certainly seems that there's no issues from the players' side. I think that I'm sure you'll talk about the potential clauses in the contract for like a couple of seasons time or something. But you know, I'm quite happy with that. I don't have an issue. But no, absolutely buzzing. You know, I think he's a great signing. I think he opens the door for more players to take notice of us now. You know, and I'm lacking sympathy for AC Milan, considering they were the clubs that were in the Super League breakup. So you know, deal with it.
It's all a far cry for Newcastle, isn't it? From extending the contracts of Kieran Clark and Dwight Gale, just because Ashley couldn't be bothered to try and sign replacements, or he thought it'd be too expensive to sign replacements. But yeah, I think you know, it's one of these crazy moments again where we're beating off competition from, you know, European heavyweights. I know they haven't been as good lately, but you know, they won the Italian league last season, and to beating off competition from those teams is something quite phenomenal. The clause you referenced there's talk of a 5-year deal for him with potentially a release clause of about 70 million, I think it is, if we don't qualify for the Champions League within a few seasons. So I think that's if he's worth 70 million in a few seasons' time, and if we haven't made the Champions League, then, you know, that shows that he's been playing well, and I'm not sure anyone will really begrudge him that move. And players have got to look after themselves these days, I think. So I don't see that as a problem. I think it's sensible. Keegan, what's your sort of initial reaction to Newcastle dropping 40 million on a centre back?
Oh, if he's anything like the last player we spent 40 million for, we're going to have a good one then, aren't we?
You might just have a bad few years to start.
Yeah, just as long as he doesn't start like he did, we should be okay. But yeah, it was funny. Like, I woke up that morning and there was like 80 messages in our group chat, and I'm like, oh shit, what's happened? No. But it was a good thing that it was happening. And then it was more shock. I think we spoke about the last pod about Nick Pope, how these things just sort of happened. Like, everything sort of went quiet, and then all of a sudden it was, he's going to sign. Things have been agreed. He'll be for a medical next week. So, and it seems like that's the way that Dan Ashworth likes to operate, is just to keep everything under the table and quiet until it's actually going to happen, or everything's been agreed, and then they'll tell whoever they need to tell and sort of leak it out there. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting, isn't it? We've actually got a good, young, decent player with good pedigree who's shown a bit even in his young career. I mean, yeah, it's really, really exciting time for Newcastle fans, I feel.
We were talking to Jonathan Johnson, it was last week or the week before, and he rated about a 7.5 out of 10. He said that Botman would sign, which was the highest he'd rated of those three players we talked to him about. And we were asking him about what are Botman's qualities as a player, because, you know, most of us don't have time to watch French football. You know, I know Bobby, our Bobby does, and Dimmy sometimes gets on to watch, you know, European football. But I keep saying I've barely got time to watch Newcastle games. So when you can go onto the Dennis Wise Scouting Network YouTube and have a little look at somebody in 8 minutes, it's pretty good. And that is exactly what happened to me when I was on the bus into Brisbane the other day. I was on the bus watching 8 minutes videos of Sven Botman, and I was just happily doing that. And then I looked up, and all of a sudden I was the only person left on the bus, and it was going in the opposite direction to what I expected it to. I walked to the front, and the driver nearly jumped out of his skin. She's like, "Oh, I didn't know there was anyone on the bus. I'm going back to the depot." So, "Oh, right, that's handy for me, isn't it?" I just had to get out and get an Uber into the city instead. But yeah, I'm blaming Sven for that one, because I was absolutely, my breath was taken away by some of his skills for a defender. So Jonathan told us that he picked out his vision and his ability to read the game and his strength and his aerial prowess. He said that they were the 4 things. But watching that video, honestly, his long passes, it's like he wins he nicks the ball, wins it, and then just plays it in front of him, and he just sprays like a diagonal, kind of like 50, 60-yard pass out to the wing or up front. And I was like, it's like, Shelby on a good day. It seemed like, I know it's YouTube and you can't, it's not like that all the time. But have either of you got any more sort of insights into his specific qualities as a defender and what he's going to bring to our defense and our team?
I think from my point of view, obviously I've never watched a lot of the French football either, so I haven't seen whole games of him. There's a theory out there that he's too slow for the Premier League. And when I was looking at some of the highlight videos, he actually reads the game really well. So he always seems to be positioned in the right places or making the right runs to intercept somebody. He's not relying on his pace to get him out of trouble all the time. He's relying on the fact that he can read the game and he has the skills and the knowledge, which you're not going to lose, So you for me, you're going to get an extra 3 or 4 years out of a player like that at the top of his game, because when he gets slower, it's not going to affect his game as much. So from that standpoint, I think longevity, in his career, assuming he comes here and plays well, I think that's going to be a big thing for him. But yeah, strong on the ball, gets himself in between the player, the forward and the ball, cushions everything over, makes some nice sliding tackles, seems to have a pretty decent all-round game, to be honest, other than his pace. And I mean, I think we've discussed this offline on the group chat as well, where there's been plenty of good quality defenders in the Premier League. John Terry, Jonathan Woodgate was never quick, but he's probably one of the best defenders I've ever seen in my life. He just read the game so well, knew where he needed to be, knew what he needed to do, was calm and collected on the ball. And that's all we want. We just want somebody who's going to be good at what they do. They don't have to be, super speed in defense. That's not the name of the game. We've got a sweeper keeper now as well. So if he's pushing up because he wants to spray those passes up, that's what Pope's there for. So yeah, to me, it just ticks a lot of boxes. I think he's comfortable with the ball at his feet. He's good in the air. He's a threat from set pieces. He is 6'5", so we're building a pretty towering defense, and our back 5 there at the moment, so with Byrne and Pope in there as well. So yeah, I'm actually quite happy to say that I've been really impressed with his overall play that I've seen from him. You look
at Eric Bailly for Man United. He's quick. But the reason that's so noticeable is because he often makes mistakes and he's having to cover himself, And even to an extent, Kyle Walker, he's quick. Yeah. But the only reason you see that usually is because he's kind of tracking back because he or someone in the defense has made some kind of mistake. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, Yedlin, yeah. So you're right to kind of reference these players like if he's as good as Jonathan Woodgate. We only had Woodgate for a season and a half, but he was a phenomenon in defense for us. And it's funny when we look at we're going to look back at some season reviews, and we just haven't had a very good defense very much of the time. We've had really good seasons with the likes of Andy O'Brien or, Dabizas at the back. And they were honest professionals, but they weren't exactly, outstanding players. Was there anything you wanted to add there, Keegan, on what you know of kind of Sven's qualities?
Yeah, well, after Friday, when we found out, I thought, we better do a little bit of digging to see what we're actually getting. And, just on like the long passes and stuff like that, he actually had a 73% accuracy for his long balls last season. Like that's pretty impressive and they're high risk long balls. Like, let's be honest, you're putting a long ball in, it's not really it's a hit and hope sometimes, but I mean, 73% is a pretty high number. So that's a pretty good indication, I think, of what sort of player he is. And I mean, what Jonathan spoke about last week, where it sort of felt like he stagnated last season, but the whole team stagnated. I mean, they went from 1st to 10th. Like, I don't think it was a Sven Botman problem. I think it was a whole Lille. I think they changed their managers last year as well, which probably didn't help his development. But now, I mean, you see what Eddie's done with players like Kraft and Joel Linton, all these guys who we thought were bang average at the start of last season, he's actually turned them into pretty competent and better than competent Premier League footballers. I mean, and he's going to get this guy for the start of pre-season by the sound of it. So he's going to have plenty of time to work with him and stuff like that, which is probably a really good thing compared to Bruno when Bruno come halfway during the season and the sort of integration period he had with the team, and he didn't actually put him in, and he drip fed him. I mean, Botman can come in and get 5 or 6 weeks under his belt, get some friendlies in, pre-season matches in, and sort of hit the ground running like come August the 6th against Nottingham Forest. So I think the timing's fantastic. He's obviously a really good player, and I'm pretty excited to see what he can do for us over the next 5 years. I think hopefully we signed him for.
When you were talking there about the improvement that Howard made in Kraft and Joe Linton, I was just getting so excited. The thought of him coaching these players who are good anyway, just to see what he can do is quite an enticing prospect, isn't it? So Botman, he's a product of Ajax's academy. He was there since the age of 9, I think it was. He went out on loan to Heerenveen in 2019-20 as a 19-year-old, and he played every minute possible of league football that season for Heerenveen when he was aged just 19-20. And then Lille bought him for 8 million from Ajax, so he didn't even go back and play for Ajax. Lille picked him up. And as I said, he's had 2 seasons there. His first season, he only missed 1 game all season. He was on the bench. So that's across 2 seasons for Heerenveen and Lille. He only missed 1 league game in that whole period of time. And he's only 21. That's quite amazing. Last season, he did miss a few more games. He had 6 games with a groin injury around Christmas. And then there was 5 games with a hamstring injury a bit later in the season as well. So they had the Champions League, and the team wasn't performing quite as well. But I don't think there's any kind of concerns over his fitness. He seems pretty durable. He can play with either foot as well, which I've discovered that, which is really important because we're going to talk in a little bit about where he might actually fit into our defence. I read that he's comfortable stepping into the midfield, and those long balls are really long passes, aren't they? They're 73%. That shows that they're targeted and directed. They're not kind of aimless lumps forward. So that bodes well. And he dominates in the air, 6'4" at least, I think he is. And when I was watching the videos on YouTube, he looked pretty big and pretty composed. The criticisms of him are that he's because of his frame, because of his size, he's maybe not quite as athletic, and his mobility is limited by his size. So I've read that he can kind of struggle against quicker attackers sometimes, and he's not the best at defending the channels. But that's kind of where you want the rest of your defense to step in, and you maybe want defenders who are going to complement him back there. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think it's obvious we're signing a player here who's got massive potential. I'll be interested to see what happens when he does get into the Dutch team. And do you know, Mark, why he hasn't got into the Dutch team yet at the age of 22?
There's just too many players ahead of him. I think if you have a look at some of the names on that team sheet, there's some big name players in that team, and I think they've just he hasn't quite squeaked in there yet. I think it kind of makes sense in a way. They haven't forced him in there because he's still eligible for the under-21s, so he's still getting international experience for Holland, while not sort of having to kick someone else out who is still at the top of their game as well. Yeah.
So I'm sure it won't be long till he's in that team. When you've got Van Dijk there, that automatically takes up 1 space, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, but if you can be training with Van Dijk, and if you can getting that experience, that's going to be some benefit as well. So in terms of our defense, then, where do you think, Keegan? I'll come to you for this. Where do you think he's going to fit into this team? Is he going to be in there along with Cher, or is he going to be? Are we going to go to a back 5 maybe? What do you see fitting into this? Because there's this myth that left-footed defenders can't play together, isn't there?
Yeah, but two right-footed defenders can for some reason. So I don't know how that works, but I think he'll be a mainstay as a left-sided centre back, and I think they'll sort of pick and choose who plays depending on their opponent. I don't think he's just going to say it's going to be Bernard Botman or Sharon Botman, whoever. I think it'll depend on the opponent, how they play, and I think Eddie will just pick the players he thinks will suit to combat that opponent. I don't think it's just going to be they're our back four and they're going to play. If they're fit, they're going to play. I think it'll be whoever we play and what attributes their forwards have. He'll just pick a team to suit that and to try and counteract that. And I think even if he does what we spoke about earlier, if he does seem a bit slow, I mean, he's going to have Matty Target next to him. He's shown in his half season, he's been a pretty reliable defender. I think we've all been pretty impressed with how he slotted into that left back role after January. So he's going to have plenty of cover if he does misread something, which doesn't seem like he does pretty well. And I reckon you get 5 or 6 yards if you can read the play before a quicker opponent. You probably get that. You make up that space. You make up for pace and the space.
And you're less susceptible to injury as well, really, if you're not relying on sprinting all the time and getting out of position.
Yeah, 100%.
Mark, is that what you see? It's basically, is Eddie just going to be a good manager and do what good managers do and not just pick the same team again and again and again?
Yeah, it's interesting, that, isn't it? No, I was actually thinking. Yeah, it's still new to us as fans after 2 years of utter dross, but it is what it is. Look, I actually agree with Keegan there. I was thinking that it's going to depend on who we're playing and whether or not Eddie Howe sees us as having that, need for an extra ball playing centre half in share who's going to play the ball out of defense, or you're going to stick 2 massive tall people in there and just sort of fend off crosses into the box. I would not be surprised to see us play 3 at the back with wing backs either against some teams either. Particularly, I think if we're going to try and keep it really tight at the back against some of the top teams like Man City and Liverpool's, where you play your kind of like your back 5, so to speak. You're going to have your 2 midfielders. You're going to have like maybe 2 wingers as well on top of that. So you're going to rely on breaking at pace with those sorts of players, but you're going to keep it tight at the back. So it's probably going to be a wait and see on a game by game basis, and that's what good managers do.
It certainly is. And like you said, it's a bit novel for us. So it's going to take us a little bit of getting used to. So the Newcastle now, since January, we've replaced or strengthened the entire defensive unit. So we've signed a goalkeeper and 4 defenders for around £90 million. So, we're building from the back, we're building the foundations, and we've managed to do that for roughly the same price as Man United paid for Harry Maguire, which is a pretty nice stat. But it's impressive, isn't it? It's impressive, Keegan, this business we've done. You talked about Pope the other day, but it's just logical and it just makes sense, doesn't it? And it's just so very unlike Newcastle United that we're used to.
Yeah. I think the key word you said was business. Just doing business is a different proposition. I'm not used to actually being linked with players and then getting the players that you actually been linked with. Like it's a novel thing. And even I think it's still going to take a while for us as fans as well. Even just to go into a game thinking we're going to win. Like you always just go in and go, oh, hopefully we don't get smashed today. Like it's now it's like, oh, we actually got these good players and we've got a manager who knows what he's talking about. And it's a whole new realm. But the players we've got, it's really smart business, the players we've got. Like they're all, apart from Botman, they've all Premier League experienced players. Like, the last thing you want is an inexperienced back 4 in a Premier League, don't know the league, don't know each other, and things can go bad really, really quickly. But you've got these 5 players now who know the league. Well, Botman's going to have 5 weeks of training before he starts anyway, or 6 weeks. So he's going to come up to speed pretty quickly. And, I mean, if one of his main attributes is reading the game, he's not going to have a problem. He's got 6 weeks to figure it all out, plus the friendlies as well. So, yeah, it's actually crazy that we're the richest club in the world, and we've probably been the shrewdest club in the transfer market so far, which hopefully that means we're saving the big money for everyone down the other end of the field, which makes the things even more exciting, I reckon.
Yeah, so, it's not even pre-season yet, and we've managed to get 3 players. And, 2 of these 5 players we're talking about are established in England internationals. Pope's got 8 caps, and he gets in pretty much all the squads. Trippier's still getting in the squad now. They're probably both in their prime as well. Trippier maybe a little bit past, but, he's still the best right back that I've ever seen for Newcastle. So, it's been pretty amazing, really, especially considering the owners before Ashworth came in were accused of not having experience or not knowing how to deal with transfer windows. And also the fact that we were worried that Premier League clubs were not going to deal with us as well, or they were going to charge us crazy fees. I know Burnley
Man United tried to.
Man United tried to, and that got short shrift. But Burnley couldn't stop us from signing Chris Wood. But they're obviously not too upset with us to not sell us Nick Pope for a good price. So. But if you look at our squad now, the defence and the goalkeeping departments are looking a little bit bloated, to be fair. We probably knew that this was going to happen, but we're going to have to sell, a number of players now. So, Mark, who is going to leave Newcastle from? We've got, I'll go through them. We've got Darlow and Gillespie in goal, so we only need one of them. There's Lewis potentially, and Manquillo, Kraft, one of those is probably going to go. Clark and Fernandez, and then potentially Lascelles as well. So we need to sell one of those goalkeepers or get rid of one of them somehow. We'll probably need to sell at least one of the right backs and probably at least 2 of the centre backs. And that's if we don't sign anyone else. How do you see that playing out over the next few weeks?
I think I've been a big advocate so far on most of these podcasts. We've been talking about players of squad depth, and I think that's the big thing that we've not only have we signed players for the first time in however long before a preseason actually even gets underway, so they actually have time to bed in and get to know the rest of the squad rather than get thrown in like 3 games into the season. But we're actually building up good squad depth, which is great to see. Yeah, we're going to definitely need to get rid of some of the, like, hesitate to say dead wood, because I think everyone contributed last season. I think Darlow is probably an easy one just to even loan back out. I think we can at least get him off the books. Although having said that, I have seen some talk that maybe Dubravka would be sold, but I find that very hard to believe. It's something that you ideally want that competition for places, and selling Dubravka to keep Darlow, just to me is like out of the frying pan into the fire. I think if we can move Darlow on, I'd be happy with that. I think Kraft's probably done enough at right back to keep his place as an understudy to Trippier, and I think if they can, they'll probably try and move Manquillo on. Although he's had decent games as well, but as I said, I think Kraft did enough when he came in second half of the season, where he really did sort of shine as that extra cover. We seem pretty solid at left back. I think we've got Lewis as an understudy to target now. Dummett's there, but I think Dummett's going to be kind of like down the pecking order just in case we need him, and I think he's going to cover at left back and at centre half.
Yeah.
I'll be very surprised if Lascelles goes. I know Dimmy won't like that, but I'll be very surprised if he's sold, unless he wants to go because he's not guaranteed first team football. I mean, he has been our captain, and despite the fact that he's just clearly not suited to Eddie Howe's style of football, he has been a good captain for us, and he has kept us going through some dark times. So I wouldn't begrudge him an extra season, but there could be that draw card of maybe going back to Nottingham Forest, and if they, like Darlow and Lascelles fancy a move back there where it all started from them. Now they're back in the top flight, then maybe we can get rid of both of them.
It's funny, isn't it? It's funny, isn't it? How we just kind of expect Forest to come and sign our off.
I actually don't, to be honest, either, because they've been doing some very, very good business. Obviously they've got Henderson, so I don't think Darlow will go there anyway. But I think if we can get rid of probably Clark, I think has to go. I think probably was too bad for us last season to ever really fully recover. Even if Eddie Howe works his miracle touch on him, I still don't see him being given a lot of leeway by the fans. Fernandez is definitely getting a bit past it now and probably needs to kind of go to greener pastures elsewhere, I guess you would say. Get put out to pasture, whatever the saying is. But yeah, I think if we can get rid of 2 centre halves, maybe, I think that kind of gives us a decent enough squad depth without necessarily leaving us too short or having a bloated squad that we end up paying for players that don't actually end up making the cut.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to loan a couple of these players out potentially, like we did with Hayden. We might not even get full wages, because they're on quite big wages. So that'll be a hit we'll have to take, I think. My thinking was maybe that we'll get some actually money potentially for Lewis and Lascelles and possibly for Manquillo. So that's why I could see them potentially leaving. But I think in reality, we'll lose Clark and Fernandez, probably Manquillo and probably Darlow as well. And then that should even the squad out a little bit. Anything different there, Keegan? Any thoughts on that?
No, I was the same. I just think Eddie Howe probably doesn't get a say in where Kieran Clark goes. I think it's going to be more our owners pick where he goes after him punching on in Saudi Arabia on that training camp they went on. I don't think they were too impressed with that. So
I didn't hear about that.
Oh, they played was it Al
Halal
in
the
maybe?
match? Yeah.
And he just started punching on with them. Like
He got sent off, yeah. In a
probably,
friendly against.
probably not the way to impress your new owners.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. I think it'd be Clark, Fernandez, Manquillo, definitely, and then we'll have probably Lewis for cover, and Dummett will probably float, I reckon, between left back, centre back, wherever he's needed, if he's available anyway, which is probably going to be a low odds. He's going to be fit most of the year anyway.
Yeah, a couple of these guys have got contracts up at the end of this season. Kraft's one of them, and Fernandez, Clark, and Dummett, and Gillespie. They're all up at the end of the season. So, whatever happens, there's going to be constant movement at the club, and we're going to be unrecognizable. We already are unrecognizable from before the takeover, but give it another year or so, and it's going to be even more so. All right, I think that's pretty good. I think we've sorted the defense out there. We've got excited about Sven again. Haven't got stuck on a bus this time. What we're going to do is we're going to leave it there, and we're going to be back actually later this week for a bonus pod. We're going to be doing a season review of the 2001-2002 season. I'll be with Mark and Keegan for that again. So I will see you then, lads, and let's get ready for Botman Begins. Cheers, lads.
Botman forever.